Phil Woodhouse here with a mystery topic you see on your program. He said he's going to talk about labour productivity, but then I said, well, he's going to talk about labour productivity and food sovereignty.
Start with really is to say what I'm not going to be disagreeing with. I accept that the focus of food sovereignty on agency, Shanine's idea here about a class acting for itself, I think captures what I get from a lot of the reading that was available from the Yale conference, which I missed, so I wasn't able to gain anything from the discussion. I'm also not contesting the highly politicized nature of agricultural science or science in general, which again is a theme that comes through a lot of the food sovereignty literature. Nor do I want to contest that existing patterns of food production are inefficient with respect to impacts on the environment and may even be entering into a period of crisis. And I fully accept that alternative thinking about food production and consumption is needed. So what I do want to do is to try and just say a few things about the relationship between consumers and producers of food. Yeah, okay. I suppose the most important thing is that fundamentally in our present context, there is a large majority of people who do not produce food. And they will have to acquire it from those who do. And this introduces a number of questions which I think are worthwhile just trying to track through. And I've endeavored to do it in a few points here. The first question, obviously, is how much surplus food do food producers have to allocate via markets or otherwise to non-producers or consumers? And this, obviously, is the question which has been touched on in the past over the day as to whether small-scale producers can feed the world. I'm not so concerned with that issue, but I am concerned with the question of price. What are the terms of exchange between producers and consumers of food? And principally, as I said to Ben earlier on, is what the issue that exercises me particularly, and this obviously reflects my background as an agronomist, is what is the productivity of food producers' labour in food production? Why? Because if more food can be produced with less labour, then the price of food can be less, but producers' income can be higher. Okay? If you're efficient with your use of labour, then in terms of food production, then you can earn more, even though the price of food is low. That's the principle of cheap food, obviously. If we produce the same amount of food with more labour, by being more labour intensive, then food producers' income must fall, or food prices must rise if food producers are to maintain their income. So therefore, there's the productivity of agricultural labour is fundamental to the cost of food. Now, this is significant for the poor, including the increasing numbers in the UK, where I live, who are resorting to food banks to feed themselves. They can't afford food. And this is not a marginal issue. I will just, as an aside, more strategically, the cost of food determines the price of labour. And this is clearly an issue as to how much labour should cost and how much, therefore, the price of labour should be in other employment. Maybe we could talk about that more later. If we use more labour-intensive methods of food production, and if they mean higher prices for food, then consumers must decide either to spend more money or possibly to put more of their own time into acquiring food. Now, I actually don't think my view on the price of food is that it may well be too low. And in wealthy economies and with a reasonably good salary, one can imagine that one could extend what is considered to be culturally important in labor-intensive preparation of food, that is to say cooking. Everybody regards this as being a good thing, labor-intensive cooking. Improves the quality of food, culturally desirable. We could easily see how that argument could extend to the production of food, growing food. And so one could, at one level, say wealthy people who earn a lot of money could devote more of their time to acquiring food. They could become food producers as well as simply consumers. This is not the case for the poor. They don't have that option, by and large. So, are there alternative paths to enable more labor-intensive food production? More food consumers could become producers along the lines of the MST. Can they earn a living? Can they earn a living that is acceptable to them as members of a largely non-food producing society? This relates to the point that Mark Edelman was making about the terms of exchange between agricultural and industrial production. And I think the question here, which will be of great interest, is what will the children of the assentados do? Will they remain on the land? Will they leave? The alternative, which is the model that's actually been pursued in most industrialized countries, is that food production is essentially subsidized by income from more highly remunerated non-agricultural income. Farmers may do this themselves by taking another job and essentially subsidizing their farming, or states may transfer money to farmers in the form of agricultural subsidies, as has been the case in the US, in the EU, and Japan, and many other places. So the question I leave really is, how does food sovereignty address this issue? I don't think that it's one that can be simply ignored. And it seems to me that one of the issues, and perhaps this relates to Phil McMichael's point, is food sovereignty cannot just be about the, if you like, peasantry as a class, but it has to be about consumers as well. But is there a program that actually adequately addresses what can be potentially a conflict of interest between producers on the one hand and consumers on the other?